Let me introduce our speakers today. Anna Kanevce is a scientist at the Center for Solar Energy and Hydrogen Research in Baden-Württemberg in Germany. She earned her PhD in physics from Colorado State University and later joined the NREL to work on CIGS, cadmium telluride, silicon, and 3.5 solar cells. Today, she works in the analytics and simulation group within the Department of Photovoltaics, and she focuses on the simulation characterization of emerging thin-film solar cells. The title of Anna's talk today is Potential and Challenges for CIGS as a bottom solar cell in tandem structure. We are very pleased to have Anna here. Anna is a long-term collaborator of Fluxim. She's very skilled in all our products, and we are looking forward for your talk. Thanks a lot, Anna.
Thank you, Daniele, for this nice introduction. First of all, let me introduce my institute where I work before I start talking about the bottom cells. We go by the acronym ZSW, which stands for Center for Solar Energy and Hydrogen Research. We are located here in the southwest of Germany in a couple of different places. So in Stuttgart, there is the photovoltaic part, and then in Ulm is the battery and the hydrogen part. We also have some wind and solar testing facilities in between. Obviously, I belong to the photovoltaic part here in Stuttgart. We are a thin film photovoltaic institute, and we concentrate mainly on two thin film technologies. They are copper indium gallium diselenide, CIGS, and perovskites. We work from small scale, laboratory scale cells up to modules from on glass as well as on flexible substrates. We also do extensive material and device characterization. Now I introduce CIGS for non-CIGS crowd here. So CIGS is a 136 inorganic semiconductor with a chalcopyrite crystal structure. It has been detected as a promising material for photovoltaic applications some decades ago, actually. And this is because it has favorable properties. It has a high absorption coefficient, so one can make absorbers of thicknesses of 1 to 2 micrometers, which means that solar cells can be produced with low consumption of material and energy. It is lightweight. It can be grown on flexible substrates. And what is very important for tandem solar cells, its band gap can be adjusted. Here is a typical structure. It's grown on glass substrate or on a foil. As a back contact, we use molybdenum. It's about half a micron thick. CIGS is 2 to 2.3 microns thick in our institute, and it's polycrystalline. Here you can see the SEM image. On the top of the absorber comes a buffer. Cadmium sulfide is a standardly used buffer. It's about 50 nanometers thick, and on the top of cadmium sulfide, it's another buffer layer. This is either intrinsic zinc oxide or zinc magnesium oxide, and those are 50 to 100 nanometers thick, and then a window layer is aluminum doped zinc oxide. Now, if we want to use CIGS for a tandem structure, we want to adjust the band gap to get the maximum efficiency. There is quite a bit of calculations how one should match the tandem partner. So here is the band gap of the bottom cell, here is of the top cell, to get the maximum efficiency. And when one sees CIGS covers the ideal range for a bottom cell as well as the ideal range for the top cell. This can be done. One can vary the indium versus gallium ratio to adjust the band gap from 1 to 1.7 EVs, or one can substitute selenium with sulfur to increase the band gap to 2.5 EVs for a top cell application. Now, I mentioned when we want to modify our cell that we optimize for a single cell structure for a bottom partner in a tandem. The first thing we need to do is to adjust the band gap. But do we know what the band gap is? You know, our textbooks say, okay, this is something from external quantum efficiency and it drops off vertically at high wavelength range, and this is our band gap. But our quantum efficiency curves all have a slope. So what is the band gap here? Now, historically, we started saying It's a rule of thumb. It was either 30%, it was 50% absolute, it was 50% of maximum quantum efficiency. Then the determination of bandgap evolved to Tauk plots, to Tauk methods. And then in the newest analysis, one uses inflection point. Here is an example of literature. This is of perovskites. What would be the bandgap value from QE if determined from different methods? And what one sees is actually there is a big difference, right? Here is 100 millielectron volt difference. So one has to keep in mind when one speaks about bandgap as an absolute and stiff value. Now in CIGS, this is even a little bit more complicated. I mentioned before the bandgap can be varied with gallium versus indium ratio. Theory and ellipsometry say yes, but this is a parabolic function. It has a bowing coefficient, and this bowing coefficient varies depending on other things. For example, it varies as well from copper amount in CIGS. The other thing is that many of the CIGS solar cells are made with spatial non-uniformity. This is so the gallium content, and therefore the bandgap in a region is smallest. This is made to optimize the short circuit current density, and then it's larger in the front and in the back. This is to optimize VOC, and there is almost always back contact grading to minimize back contact recombination, as well as for low quality cells to provide a back surface field. Now, what will QE give me for such a, actually there is no defined bandgap value of such a solar cell. Will QE give me the minimum? Will it give me the average? Will it give me something in between? Now to try to answer this, I simulated in SCAPS grading profiles like this. So the GGI and the bandgap was uniform for a while, and then started linearly increasing after a while. And here are the simulated QE curves of all of these profiles. Of course, the wider the grading extends, the more slope, the softer slope is of the QE curve. Now, what will this QE give me? If I think that QE will give me a minimum bandgap, now all of these grading profiles will have 1 eV bandgap. Another assumption is, normally when the absorbers are made, they go through X-ray diffraction, and this gives me a material composition, integrated or the average material composition. So for those graded profiles, this would be the integrated, the bandgap determined from the integrated GGI value. But what does QE tell me? It tells me something like this. So up to 1 micrometer, it gives me the minimum bandgap. It gives me actually something that is very close to the bandgap of the first micrometer from the p-n junction. Now this is logical because most of the light is absorbed in the first micrometer. Now I will switch to the bottom cell. I will show you some experiments and some simulations. I will keep the whole discussion top cell agnostic. So the top cell is just presented with this blue box. It is simulated and measured with a 700 nanometer long pass filter. 700 nanometer corresponds to a bandgap of 1.77 EVs, which is the bandgap of some wide bandgap perovskites. And I just look at what happened when we have only this part of the spectrum available. Well, what happens first is that what the photons, which would have been absorbed in the window and in the buffer layers, now are absorbed in the top cell. So nothing is getting absorbed here. The single junction CIGS solar cell quantum efficiency curves look like this. So there was this part, there was this loss of current because of a parasitic absorption in cadmium sulfide. Because of this, for years, we have been trying to solve this, to minimize this absorption, either by making cadmium sulfide thinner or with replacing it with material with a wider bandgap. Now, on the first glance, Top cell is absorbing everything there. I don't have parasitic absorption. I can do whatever I want with my cadmium sulfide and with my buffers. On the second glance, there is this issue which has been observed many times. This is when a CIGS cell is illuminated only with low energy photons, so with photons with energy below 2.4 electron volts. A lot of cells have a tendency to show a S-shaped curve. This is also known as a red king, and is manifested with a very big fill factor losses. After illumination with white light, this king disappears. The JV curve looks as it should, is a diode curve, is exponential. Also, the dark curves, the turn-up voltage is lower. Now here, I try to look at the time evolution of this S-shaped curve, and one sees that after seconds of white light exposure, the fill factor jumps significantly. And then it improves and improves and saturates after minutes. The phenomenon is reversible, and then after hours, the S-shaped curve and the fill factor loss comes back. Now a question arises, okay, why do I need to worry about something which disappears after seconds of white light exposure? And the answer is because the bottom cell does not have a chance to see white light, because the high energy photons are absorbed by the top cell. This means that we have to take extra care in bottom cell design to avoid the S-shaped curves. This brings me to a point of how we measure JV curves. Standard measurement condition in our lab and in other labs is to do light soak, white light soak, of solar cells before we do JV measurements. This is okay, this improves VOC, this improves fill factor, it's fine. However, this doesn't correspond to a bottom cell condition. For example, here are filtered fill factors of series of cells which have seen 15 minutes of white light soak. All the fill factors look similar-ish. They are in the 70% range. Now the same cells were put in the dark overnight, and then fill factors measured again. Some cells are still okayish, other cells have really fill factor problems. So if we do light soak and then put a filter to do JV measurement, we can really not distinguish if we have a cell that would produce a fill factor, a low fill factor as a bottom cell, or that would work well. Okay, what is causing my fill factor loss? What is causing the S-shaped curve? How can I design myself in order not to have it? Well, the usual suspects are band alignments. This is a part of the equilibrium band diagram of a CIGS solar cells. There are secondary barriers all over the place. The barriers in this direction would inhibit the motion of the photoelectrons and therefore create fill factor loss. The barriers in this direction would create a barrier for electrons in the diode direction and create lower turn-up voltage and so. So the conduction band offset can be varied with allowing. For example, zinc magnesium oxide band gap can be varied with magnesium versus zinc ratio. CIGS band gap, as said, can be varied with gallium versus indium. This is a little bit problematic because if we want to use CIGS as a bottom cell, we want to reduce the band gap. If we reduce the band gap, we pull the conduction band down and we create a larger barrier. This we have observed. Here are some examples. Here are JV measurements, white shown with blue, so with unfiltered light, and also with a filtered illumination of two CIGS solar cells. 33% gallium, this is a standard band gap CIGS solar cells, and then solar cell, and then with 9% GGE, this is a low band gap 6. Now the white illuminated, the non-filtered curves are standard, they're diodes, well behaved. The filtered ones, the standard bandgap cell is a diode curve, is good, and then the low bandgap cell has an S shape. Sometimes this S shape is very pronounced. Other times, for example, like in this example, the fill factor goes down to 60. So when one looks at the JV curves, this is not an S shape. This looks more like a series resistance, but it's significantly lower fill factor in the red, so for a filtered light, than for white light. And one can really do JVT measurement at lower temperature. This curve is not a series resistance anymore. One can see a very well pronounced kink. Now, in addition to band alignment, there are additional suspects for such a behavior. And they come from the carrier density in the buffer layer. Now, if you look at those band diagrams, the band alignment is the same. The band offsets here and here are the same. But for the band diagram, which is shown with red, the buffer layers, so cadmium sulfide and zinc magnesium oxide, are not highly doped. Now, because they're low doped, because of their low doping, there is a significant band bending in the buffer materials. What this does is this affects also the band bending in the CIGS layer. If you look at, so now the red band diagram, the Fermi level here is in the middle of the bandgap. And this makes it beautiful for non-radiative recombination at the interface. If the buffer layers are highly doped, the conduction band is close to the Fermi level, and then we have many electrodes here, but not many holes, and the device is more tolerant to recombination at the interface. Now, what can we do to increase the doping in the layers? And which one is more important? Is it cadmium sulfide? Is it zinc magnesium oxide? Which one can we concentrate on? Here I show simulations. They are contour plots of fill factor and conversion efficiency. On the x-axis is the doping in zinc magnesium oxide. On the y in cadmium sulfide. So now, when I was operating with AM 1.5 spectrum, cadmium sulfide is known to be photodoped. If cadmium sulfide is highly doped. So if I'm here in doping in cadmium sulfide, doping in zinc magnesium oxide doesn't really make a lot of difference. The fill factors are already over 70%. Efficiencies are also over 9%. But now, if I do not have opportunity to dope cadmium sulfide, so if I'm here, now it makes a lot of difference what happens to the second buffer layer, because something has to pull these band gaps down and have the inversion in the sixth layer as opposed to the buffer layers. Okay, so now we have to dope the zinc magnesium oxide layer. How does one do it? One asks the chemists, and they say it's the oxygen vacancies which are related to the doping concentration in zinc magnesium oxide. So how does one create more vacancies? One reduces the oxygen in part of the layer to generate more oxygen vacancies. So here are the results. Before the zinc magnesium oxide optimization, we had low fill factors, and afterwards we had significantly improved fill factors. Now the question is, does cadmium sulfide help? Can we still thin the cadmium sulfide? The answer is yes. Decreasing the thickness of cadmium sulfide from 50 to 30 nanometers improved the fill factor. Now, we light soak those cells. After the light soaking, all of them were the same. So if we measured everything with light soaking before, we would just have been blinded by the light, and we wouldn't see which cell has a problem and which one does not. There is additional trick that one can do to play a detective and figure out which layer is causing us problems, and this is to light soak with a long pass filter which has an energy between the band gaps of two material. So we had a 455 nanometer filter. This has energy of 2.7 electron volts, and this is larger than the band gap of cadmium sulfide, but lower than zinc magnesium oxide. Here are the results with yellow, and then one sees that in this step, the zinc magnesium oxide problem is solved, and only cadmium sulfide is the problem. So before I finish, I want to somehow to put a little bit of insight in a modified Shockley quasar theory, or to calculate what is the maximum potential one can expect from a bottom cell. We always talk about what one can get from tandem, but what do we gain from the bottom cell? I will go very quickly through this. So what do we gain if we have only this part of the spectrum? We lose current, of course, in compared to single cell. We lose voltage because of decreased quasi-Fermi level splitting. The efficiency doesn't look very dependent on the band gap variation. Let me zoom this in. Now my because of the absorption bands in the AM1 point spectrum, we do not have a monotonic dependence of the band gap on the bottom cell performance. Now this is more important or more distinguished when one has a different band gap of a solar cell. So here is a Shockley quasar theory for different band gaps of the top cell. Now the smaller the band gap of the top cell, the more important the band gap of the bottom cell is. This graph is also showing how crucial transmission of the top cell is, and this is much more important than the bottom cell band gap. And now to summarize, a lot of the know-how learned from single cell optimization can be used for a bottom cell. One has to take additional consideration when blue photons are not available. One of them is the buffer conductivity has to really be high, and band alignment plays even more significant role. The band gap determination of graded cells has inherent ambiguity, so one has to keep that in mind. And maximum performance of a filter cell depends strongly on the top cell properties. So the bottom cell is somehow playing a supporting role in this structure. So one has to keep that in mind. And so with that, I thank you for your interest and for your patience and for listening and for inviting me.
Thanks a lot, Anna. This was a great presentation. I can start with a couple of questions myself. I got interested in your slide 16. There is a JV characteristic that I didn't understand that much.
I'm going back. I ask for your patience. The slides are moving backwards slower. Here
we are. On the right, you have a filtered JV characteristic and the JV characteristic under white light. But I see the VOC where the filtered is higher than with the white light. Do you have an explanation for this?
For this one, for the low band gap one only. The others are
on the
right.
The same. No, the one on the right. The graph, that one.
This one.
The graph on the right of this presentation. This dark filter and white JV curves. Yeah, that one. Yes,
this is because I have a barrier also in the forward direction. This is causing a higher turn-up voltage. So this is the if you see here, I will show. This is because the doping is creating a barrier in this direction. So and this is a very good point. It could look like I'm doing something correct and increasing the VOC, but it's actually creating a problem.
And the other one is just at the beginning, you mentioned that CIGS can be used as bottom solar cells, but also as top solar cells. If we inverted the structure and we fabricate tandem with perovskites, do you see an increase of the stabilities of the tandem? The perovskite is protected. Do you see other problems? Can you comment on that?
You mean invert the structure having CIGS as a bottom cell and perovskite on the top? Or
yes.
So yes, I know from my perovskite colleagues that low band gap perovskites have problems with stability, and CIGS is much more stable. And so this is one argument why one would use perovskite 6 tandem as opposed to pero-pero tandem. Also, 6 can go down to 1 electron volt without problem. And this is important when we want to go to triple junction.
Yeah.
So those are the two arguments for stability is a big issue. Yeah.
Yeah. Timon is asking a good question here. Could your finding for 6 as bottom cell in a tandem also be helpful for usual single junction 6 solar cells? Or it's fine to simply really fully on white light soaking to solve field factor issues there?
So in a single junction, this is why we encounter those problems, because if you optimize a cell for a single junction, it's completely relevant to say, I need to expose my cell a couple of seconds in white light and it's working wonderfully. So I don't think that this is, there was quite a bit of research on this S-shaped curve maybe some years ago, but this was maybe mainly from academical curiosity. Mm-hmm. Because we wanted to understand what is going on with the buffers, what is going on with metastabilities and with the defects. But now this is not just a scientific curiosity. Now the cells will not work if we do not if we don't look at these features. So we have to really address these problems.
Yeah. A question from Alok. What lattice mismatch is permissible between layers in a tandem solar cell structure?
So between layers in the tandem solar cell structure, meaning between the window layers or?
I'm assuming in between the two different, the interlayer between the two different solar cells.
I would not know this. I think all of these layers are lattice mismatched anyway. It's very different than 3.5 materials, where materials are super quality, and then even small density of defects at the interface is making a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, another one from Adam. Have you tried using something like ALD zinc magnesium oxide as a buffer layer to get away from the cadmium sulfide completely? It could also provide you with a means of conduction band alignment towards lower energy gap 6.
We tried different things. We keep on trying still the cells with cadmium sulfide have the best VOC. We try ALD layers with different buffer layers, with different window layers, all sputtered, chemical bud deposition. So it's something that really has to be taken into account, and it's the study of alternative buffer layers is more important now. Yes, we try different things, and with mixed success, I would say. Some of them are getting rid of fill factor beautifully, but then we get VOC losses. And so it's...
Here there is another one. What are the postdoctoral opportunities for researchers specializing in 6 tandem solar cell using SCAPS simulation tools? This I could start replying. It's better to use ZFOS and be specialized in using ZFOS.
So this is a question for you.
No, please. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I don't see many other questions here. If you have any additional questions, this channel is going to be open for a while. The next webinar, we are going to change topic again. It's going to be on Tuesday, May the 6th, with scientists from OLEDWorks, which is a company developing OLEDs in the United States. The title of this talk will be Multi-Stack OLEDs using automotive, lighting, and micro displays applications. So with this, I would like to thank Anna again. It was a big pleasure to have you here, and sorry again for all the confusions at the beginning. Hopefully it was an interesting webinar in any case, and I will see you all the next time, and thank you all again.
Thank you.
Bye.